You ever look at the news, see some politician making a complete fool of themselves, and wonder how the heck did this person end up in charge of anything? Yeah, you're not alone. The brutal truth. Politics isn't a game of intelligence or competence, it's a playground for the overconfident, the manipulative and, brace yourself, the downright incompetent. And no, this isn't some conspiracy theory. This is human psychology, social dynamics, and a lesson Machiavelli tried to scream at us 500 years ago. Here's the kicker: while you're out there trying to do the right thing, questioning your decisions, acting with ethics, the loudest fool in the room is climbing the ladder, one fake promise at a time. Why? Because political manipulation works. Leadership failure isn't the exception. It's the design. And if you've ever wondered why idiots lead, why fools in power keep getting promoted, and why competence seems like the last thing people care about, this video is your wake-up call. We're going to peel back the layers of the truth about politics, from Machiavelli's raw insights, to psychological traps like the Dunning-Kruger effect, to the structural loopholes that let incompetence flourish. Nothing's off limits today. Get ready to see the system for what it really is. So, buckle up, because after this, you'll never look at power the same way again. It's crazy how often we see fools in power while the truly competent people stay hidden in the background, right? Think about Nero burning Rome or Elizabeth Holmes convincing top investors with smoke and mirrors. The pattern repeats across centuries, like a bad joke humanity keeps telling itself. And, yeah, Machiavelli noticed this long before us, way back in Renaissance Italy, when he observed the art of political manipulation firsthand. What's wild is that leadership failure isn't a glitch in the system. It often feels like the system was designed that way. Power doesn't always go to the smartest or the most prepared. It usually falls into the hands of the loudest, the most reckless, and those who aren't smart enough to doubt themselves. And while we watch the circus, the truth about politics remains hidden behind layers of carefully staged incompetence. And let's be real, sometimes the people pulling the strings know exactly what they're doing. They use their leadership failure as a shield. Because playing dumb can be a political strategy too. Ever heard the phrase, never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity? Well, in politics, sometimes it's both. Fools in power, playing chess with pawns they barely understand. So here's the uncomfortable question. Is it incompetence? Or Machiavellian genius disguised as failure? The more you dig into this paradox, the more you realize that behind every bad decision and every leadership failure, there's often a hidden playbook of political manipulation, and that's where Machiavelli's brutal realism kicks in. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince as a motivational guide for good governance. Nope. He wrote it as a survival manual for anyone crazy enough to chase power in a ruthless world. Exiled, bitter, and with nothing left to lose, he laid out the truth about politics with surgical precision. Appearances matter more than reality. You don't need to be competent. You just need to look competent. That's why political manipulation works so well. People don't vote for truth. They vote for the best performance. Machiavelli knew that a leader's public image could cover up endless leadership failure behind the scenes. Think of CEOs doing PR damage control after a scandal, or politicians smiling during a crisis they secretly caused. Sound familiar? And let's not kid ourselves. This isn't just ancient history. From corporate boardrooms to social media influencers, the game hasn't changed. Politicians fake empathy, leaders stage photo ops. Entire careers are built on carefully scripted lies. If you want to see Machiavelli's philosophy in action, just watch any election campaign for 5 minutes. So here's the kicker. If you're still wondering why idiots lead and why fools in power keep winning, Machiavelli already gave us the blueprint, the next layer of this ugly reality. It's not just about manipulation. It's also about how smart people accidentally sabotage their own path to power. You know that friend who overthinks everything. The one who's always questioning, doubting, analyzing every possible outcome before making a move. Now imagine that friend trying to navigate the brutal world of politics and power. That's the reality for most intelligent people. Their self-awareness becomes their biggest obstacle while they're busy thinking. The overconfident fool is already making decisions. It's ironic, right? The very qualities that make someone wise, like critical thinking and ethical concern, often stop them from taking bold leadership roles. They hesitate, they second-guess, they don't want to manipulate others or play dirty games. Meanwhile, the loud and clueless march straight into positions of power. It's like watching someone walk into a lion's den, smiling. And let's be honest, the system rewards certainty, not intelligence. Voters, shareholders, and followers crave simple answers. They want leaders who sound like they know what they're doing, even when they clearly don't. That's why political manipulation works. The loudest voice in the room doesn't have to be right. It just has to sound right. Take populist leaders around the world as examples. They thrive on this exact dynamic. If you're wondering how to overcome this ethical handicap, here's a tip. Practice controlled assertiveness. Start small, lead a team project at work, speak first in meetings, read books like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie or The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Because the harsh truth about politics is this: if you don't step up, the fools in power will gladly fill the void. And guess what? There's even scientific research that explains this pattern. Here's a twist most people don't see coming. Being too smart can actually work against you in leadership. Yeah, you heard that right. A 2017 study dropped a bombshell. Leadership effectiveness climbs with intelligence, but only up to an IQ of around 120. After that, it flatlines. Worse, it can even decline. Welcome to another layer of the truth about politics that nobody tells you. Why? Simple, super smart leaders often speak in ways most people can't follow. Their ideas sound complex, their solutions seem too abstract, and their communication falls flat. Imagine someone giving a TED Talk, when all the audience wanted was clear, direct instructions. That's where leadership failure sneaks in. Not because of bad intentions, but because of poor connection. Political manipulation loves this gap. Fools in power, with their simpler vocabulary and easy answers, slide right into leadership roles. Meanwhile, the person with real solutions sounds like they're giving a university lecture. Look at history. How many times has a smooth-talking populist crushed a well-meaning intellectual at the polls? So here's the million-dollar question. How do intelligent people bypass this IQ ceiling? The answer: simplify without dumbing down. Great leaders like Barack Obama mastered this art, taking complex ideas and turning them into relatable messages. Because if you want power, if you want to outplay the fools, you've got to speak the language people actually understand. And here's where psychology hands us another piece of this confusing puzzle. Now, here's where the comedy of politics turns into full-blown psychological tragedy. The Dunning-Kruger effect. It's that cognitive bias where the less competent someone is, the more confident they become about their non-existent abilities. Yeah, it's the scientific explanation for why fools in power feel so sure of themselves, while the real experts sit quietly in the corner. Think of that coworker who talks the most in meetings, but delivers the least, or that politician making bold statements with zero factual basis. This isn't random. It's how the brain tricks incompetent people into thinking they're leadership material. And the worst part, their overconfidence looks a lot like competence to outsiders. Another win for political manipulation. Leadership failure thrives under this illusion. The louder, brasher, and more self-assured a person appears, the more people assume they must know what they're doing. That's why elections, promotions, and power grabs often reward the wrong people. The truth about politics: it's less about skill, and more about the illusion of skill. If you want to protect yourself from falling for this trap, whether as a leader or a voter, start fact-checking everything. Practice intellectual humility. Read books like Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman to train your brain against these biases. Because believe me, the next time you hear someone speaking with blind certainty, there's a good chance you're staring straight at the Dunning-Kruger effect in action. And that overconfidence, it plays right into the next deadly dynamic. Let's face it, in politics, business, and pretty much every leadership arena, confidence beats competence almost every time. People don't follow the smartest voice in the room. They follow the loudest, the most decisive, the one who makes them feel safe, even if the ship's sinking. That's why fools in power keep winning. It's not about delivering results. It's about delivering certainty. Take military history, for example. There have been generals who won battles purely because their soldiers believed in them. Despite having terrible strategies on paper, the same goes for tech startups, where founders with sky-high charisma secure millions in funding before the company crashes in a blaze of leadership failure. Confidence sells the dream. Competence just writes the boring manual. Political manipulation thrives on this dynamic. When a leader stands at a podium, pounding their fist and making bold promises, people lean in. They want hope. They want answers. They're hungry for leadership, even if it's coming from someone who has no idea what they're doing. The truth about politics: optics beat outcomes. Almost every time. If you want to flip this in your favor, here's the hack. Develop what psychologists call calibrated confidence. Speak with authority. Control your body language. Take public speaking courses like Toastmasters, or read Presence by Amy Cuddy. Because if you leave the stage empty, guess what? The next overconfident fool is already stepping up to take your place. And often, that's just the beginning of a bigger institutional mess. Here's where the plot thickens. Once fools in power grab their throne, they don't surround themselves with brilliance. Oh no. They build walls of incompetence around them like a protective moat. Why? Simple. If everyone around you is worse than you, you'll always look like the smartest person in the room. It's leadership failure. By design, Machiavelli spotted this move centuries ago. Weak rulers pick even weaker subordinates to avoid being outshined. It's a political manipulation classic. Just look at any corrupt government or failing corporation. You'll find a pyramid of bad decisions, stacked one clueless executive at a time. They don't hire for skill, they hire for loyalty and obedience. You see this everywhere. CEOs hiring yes men, politicians appointing friends with zero qualifications, or even small business owners choosing incompetent staff just to feel in control. The result? Institutionalized incompetence. Decisions get worse, crises multiply, the public loses trust, but the leader stays in power longer than they should. If you're working in an environment like this, here's your survival tip. Document everything. Keep receipts, build alliances with the few competent people still left, read books like The Dictator's Handbook to understand how this toxic dynamic works, because this web of weak leadership doesn't grow by accident. It grows because of a deep psychological need for simplicity. And that's exactly what we'll unpack next. Let's get real. The human brain hates complexity. We're hardwired to crave simple answers, clear villains, and easy solutions. That's why fools in power thrive, because they feed us exactly that. During times of crisis, people don't want a nuanced explanation. They want someone who points a finger and says, "Here's the problem and here's the fix." Political manipulation knows this weakness and exploits it with surgical precision. Think back to any major political speech during a national emergency. Have you noticed how often leaders reduce global issues to slogans and sound bites? Build the wall, drain the swamp. Yes, we can. Simplicity sells. The truth about politics is, most voters won't read a 300-page policy document. They'll remember the catchphrase. This need for simplicity doesn't just impact politics, it affects workplaces too. Ever sat in a meeting where the most oversimplified and often wrong solution won? That's cognitive bias at work. And unfortunately, that same simplicity bias fuels leadership failure, making it easier for incompetents to climb the ranks and stay there. If you want to guard yourself against this trap, start by embracing intellectual discomfort. Follow diverse news sources. Read books like Factfulness by Hans Rosling, which teaches how to handle complex realities without freaking out. Because if you don't train your mind to resist oversimplification, guess what? The next smooth talking, overconfident leader will be selling you their version of the truth, and they won't care how accurate it is. But hey, there's also a moral reason why smarter people hesitate to play that game, and that's where we're heading next. Here's a brutal truth most people won't admit. Intelligence often comes with an ethical handicap. The smarter someone is, the more they see the moral gray areas, the unintended consequences, the long-term damage. While fools in power jump at any chance for political manipulation, smart people pause, hesitate, and ask themselves, is this right? And that hesitation, it's often the kiss of death in the power game. Think about whistleblowers like Edward Snowden or political figures who resigned rather than lied to the public. That's the ethical burden playing out in real time. Meanwhile, the person willing to bend the truth, twist the facts, or flat out lie, walks right into leadership positions without blinking. Leadership failure. Sometimes it's the consequence of having too many morals in a game built for moral flexibility. It's a sad irony. The very people who could bring competence, vision, and long-term thinking often sabotage their own political ascent because they refuse to play dirty. The truth about politics. Power rarely rewards moral restraint. It rewards bold moves, even when those moves are ethically questionable or downright disastrous for the people affected. If you're someone struggling with this ethical dilemma, here's a thought. Study ethical persuasion techniques. Read Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. Learn how to frame your truth in ways that still get results, without selling your soul, because the game isn't going to change, but how you play it, that's still in your hands. And the structure that enables all this incompetence, yeah, that's the next layer we need to uncover now. Let's talk about the breeding ground where fools in power multiply like weeds. Structural environments built for incompetence. We're talking about systems with delayed feedback, no real accountability, and vague success metrics. In places like that, leadership failure isn't an accident. It's the natural result of a broken system that rewards the loudest, not the smartest. Think about corporate boardrooms where CEOs get golden parachutes after tanking a company. Or political offices where leaders stay in power for decades, despite scandal after scandal. The truth about politics, and business and media, is that the rules of the game are often written to protect incompetence. Why? Because clear evaluation is hard, and ambiguity keeps the wrong people in charge. Political manipulation thrives in this fog. When there's no clear definition of success, Leaders can spin any outcome as a win, unemployment rising, blame the previous administration, stock prices dropping. It's just a temporary dip. Incompetence wrapped in excuses. It's like playing soccer with no goalposts. Nobody knows who's winning. So the person holding the ball just keeps running. If you're stuck in one of these environments, your best weapon is clarity. Demand metrics. Push for transparent evaluation processes. Study organizational behavior books like Good to Great by Jim Collins, because once you see how the system protects itself, you'll also see how manipulation tactics work within it. And speaking of tactics, the next layer is where things get downright sinister. Here's where things get dark and painfully predictable. Once fools in power secure their spot, they don't just sit back. They start using classic political manipulation tactics to stay there. First, divide and conquer. They create in-groups and out-groups, us versus them, loyalists versus traitors. Suddenly, any criticism sounds like an attack on the entire group, not just leadership failure. Then comes the crisis manufacturing. Have you noticed how some leaders always seem to have a new emergency to save people from? Economic panic, moral outrage, imaginary enemies, whatever it takes to keep the population distracted and emotionally charged. The truth about politics, fear keeps people compliant. And fools in power know how to use that fear like a weapon. Another trick, doublethink. They rewrite history, shift narratives, and confuse the public so badly that yesterday's lie becomes today's fact. One week they deny the problem exists. The next, they claim they've already solved it. Look at political regimes that control media narratives, or corporations that bury scandals under PR spin. Same playbook, different arena. If you want to defend yourself against this onslaught, build your media literacy. Start following fact-checking sites like Snopes or PolitiFact. Read Propaganda by Edward Bernays to understand the machinery behind mass manipulation. Because here's the thing, if you don't see these tactics coming, you'll fall for them. But don't worry, the final piece of this puzzle is all about how to resist. And that's exactly where we're going next, alright? After tudo isso, vem a pergunta que realmente importa. Como resistir? Como não cair nas armadilhas dos incompetentes que dominam o jogo com political manipulation barata? A primeira resposta é simples, mas poderosa. Cultive humildade intelectual. Questione suas próprias certezas. Leia livros como Thinking in Bets, da Annie Duke, para aprender a tomar decisões com base em probabilidades e não só em emoções. Outra arma essencial, Media Literacy. Não engula qualquer manchete sensacionalista. Siga fontes diversas. Compare narrativas. Use ferramentas como o Media Bias Chart para entender de onde a informação realmente vem. Porque, meu amigo, os fools in power contam com sua distração e desinformação para manter o controle. Além disso, lute por instituições com diversidade cognitiva e transparência real. Exija processos claros, metas mensuráveis e, principalmente, accountability de verdade. Se você trabalha em uma empresa, sugira auditorias externas. Se for no campo político, pressione por leis de transparência, porque quando a estrutura muda, o jogo muda junto. E por último, nunca subestime o poder de pequenas ações. Forme grupos de discussão, participe de conselhos comunitários, fortaleça redes sociais que promovam o pensamento crítico, porque, no fim das contas, a verdade sobre politics é essa. Ou você aprende a jogar o jogo, ou vai continuar sendo manipulado por quem já entendeu as regras, mas calma. Antes de fechar esse ciclo, tem algo que você precisa saber sobre o que te trouxe até aqui. So, after all this, let me ask you, how long are you willing to keep playing blind in a game that's rigged from the start? Now that you know how fools in power climb, how political manipulation shapes every speech, and how leadership failure isn't a bug, but a feature, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you start questioning the leaders you follow? Will you sharpen your media literacy? Will you step up and fill the leadership void yourself, instead of leaving it for the next overconfident amateur? Or will you keep pretending the system will magically fix itself? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Seriously, I want to know. Which manipulation tactic did you recognize from your own job, your city, your country, and most importantly, what's the first thing you'll do to resist falling for it again? And hey, if you want to keep unmasking the truth about politics, power, and the psychology behind all this chaos, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because trust me, this rabbit hole goes way deeper than today's video.